Thank you everyone for joining. Let me welcome you all to another guest speaker session from Innovative Astrosolutions. Today I take pride to invite Arsh Mishra Ji to talk on the topic of Introduction to Nadi Astrology. I have been following Arsh Ji from 2018 since I joined Quora and started writing there. He is an excellent writer and his knowledge on Vedic astrology is commendable. So, in fact, I'm a big fan of his writing, and it's a highly motivating to see his writing, and I even continue to write because of him. So, thank you, Ji, for joining today. So, to give a little bit background about Arsh Ji, he also comes from the family lineage of astrology. Both of his like father and mother both are astrologers, so they are practicing together. Arsh Ji did his master degree from International Management Institute, and he's also working as a full-time HRT consultant in Deloitte. And he is also practicing Vedic astrologer and Vaastu consultant. So he founded VedicVision to provide astrological consultation, and also he teaches astrology to the students. So he is very knowledgeable astrologer. So I request people to contact him through his email ID and the phone number mentioned here. So thank you again for joining today. It's my pleasure to have you today. So for the audience, today the audience size is very big. So I would request you all to put you on mute. So even if you have any doubts, please make a note of it. We will allocate some 30 minutes at the end for a Q&A. Thank you again. So let me stop sharing. You can start from.
Sure. Thank you so much, Muthu Vijayan Ji, for that was a very kind introduction. And just one note for everyone, like if you have any questions in between, please feel free to put those on chat. If I can cover them on the way while covering through the topic, if they're relevant to the topic, I'll make sure that I answer them as we go ahead. Because the topic that we have chosen for today, an introduction to Nadi Astrology, it is quite an extensive thing that we are trying to do here. And my entire approach, at least for this session, is so that I can cover maximum ground, so that anyone who has even a basic understanding of astrology, they will be able to follow through, right? So there will be things, basic things, for example, maybe going into a bit of a detail about the planet signs that I'll skip for today, because going into that means that our main subject matter would be left. So with that, let me just share my screen and we can continue with the entire presentation. And please feel free to put your questions anytime on the chat, and I'll see if I can answer them as we go ahead. So let me begin with just an introduction to what we refer to when we say Nadi Astrology, right? And there is a lot of confusion. There is a lot of communication and misinformation that is spread about Nadi Astrology and exactly what do we mean by Nadi Astrology, what is it that happens in the entire, what do we actually mean by the word Nadi, and what type of texts are called Nadi texts, and so on. So to give you a bit of an idea about what we refer to when we call Nadi, there are basically two historical instances from where you can say that the word Nadi has originated. One being the texts from the Nadi readers, primarily in the southern India, that you would be familiar with, which you see on the palm leaves or on the tad patras we have. There are predictions written for most of us, and you go ahead and then if you find your leaf, then you are able to read through your predictions, right? And there are multiple different types of Nadi texts available on those lines. And they are available with these so-called Nadi readers, as they are known, the Nadi readers or the Nadi keepers, who go through and who read through your presentation, which is basically nothing but an entire compilation of predictions that have been written in certain permutations and combinations. So there is no part of an analysis that goes on there as such. It's what is already mentioned and specified, and if you find yours, then you can read through. These are one entire division of those ancient texts. And then there are other types of Nadi texts which you would have seen getting familiarized in the last 50 years and 100 years by the contribution of a lot of astrologers. B.V. Raman being one, the first among the astrologers who tried to interpret some of the Nadi texts. Then you have R.G. Rao and the other likes who have gone into these Nadi texts. Primarily, you will be aware of you would be aware of the Bhrigu Nandi Nadi. You would be aware of the Chandrakala Nadi, which has been translated by, in parts, has been translated by R. Santhanam. And there are several other such Nadi texts. Now, in order to understand exactly what Nadi astrology is, how it is different from the so-called Parashari astrology and all of those things, you have to understand what the word Nadi means, and then how the evolution of astrology has happened over these several years, right? Over the several thousands of years, rather. So, Nadi astrology, the word Nadi has like multiple different meanings. In one, it is the root. In one interpretation, it is the root, it is the base, it is the nutshell in which anything can be summarized, right? It's the pulse of anything. In another interpretation, just from the Sanskrit root, it is a compendium. It's a compilation of everything that exists, and just an entire plethora of texts or works that compiles everything there is about something. So when we say Nadi astrology, it's either you can call it the root or the very base of the principles of astrology, or the compilation of almost everything that's there. These are, in fact, I'll just go ahead in my presentation. These are, in fact, the first texts of astrology that have been written. So as astrology developed, as astrology was evolving, first of all, in the times of the Saptarishis, in the Vedic and the pre-Vedic ages, and across civilizations, the way this knowledge was transferred, the way this knowledge was communicated was through an oral tradition, because stationery was not permanent. The way of writing, the way of recording was not something that could hold on for a very long time, and it was all verbal. The first compilation, at least from a mythological perspective, that we find, because historically we don't have any evidence, from a mythological perspective, the first compilation we find is how those texts mythologically transfer from the gods and the Saptarishis to humans. So there you have an entire chain. First, the knowledge goes on from Shiv or Lord Shiva to the humans. Then it goes on from the Saptarishi to their disciples, and so on and so forth. It is transferred throughout ages through the Guru Shishya tradition or the Guru Shishya Parampara, right? So there, the first Nadi text, the first Nadi text that you will find is the Shiv Nadi, which is a text or a compilation by the Rishi Agathyar, where the entire compilations are regarding the predictions. These are the texts that you find with the Nadi readers that are there mostly around southern parts of India, but also in the north there are some couple of them. This is the first of the Nadi texts and the most ancient, among the most ancient of the Nadi texts, where specifically predictions are laid down. Not much to do with analysis or how you can analyze a horoscope, but predictions as such. Then, as you go ahead, you find other Nadi texts, for example, the Saptarishi Nadi, which is a communication or a dialogue between the Saptarishis of the Vedic age and Devi Parvati. So it's an entire discussion or an entire roundtable council of astrology that is sitting and describing the destiny of everyone who is supposed to be born. And they discuss multiple horoscopes in different permutations and combinations, and they write down predictions. Similarly, you have other texts of Bhrigu Nadi, Nandi Nadi, and so on and so forth. Now, the reason why these texts become so important is they give you an idea of how astrology was conceived to be. It is after this point of time that actual textbooks became possible. Writing down knowledge became possible, that you have the other texts like the Brihat Parashar Hora Shastra, the Gemini Sutras, and all of the other texts that have evolved over time. But it is all originating from the Nadi texts. And the difference there is that all of these texts that you have, the Brihat Parashar Hora Shastra, Gemini Sutra, and all of these texts, they specifically talk about principles. You will not find predictions, actual predictions or actual interpretation of a horoscope anywhere in any of the classical texts. They may talk about examples, they may talk about a couple of yogas, but they never ever at any point of time discuss a horoscope. And the Nadi texts are quite opposite. They discuss primarily horoscopes. You will not find any evidence of the theory that has been applied, the rules that have been applied. And so you can say that the Nadi texts give you a practical insight in how the knowledge of astrology was primarily to be used. And that is why at least throughout the prediction, throughout the tradition of astrology, Nadi readers and people who have Nadi texts, because they are very rare to come by. Some are preserved in a couple of museums, some have been lost over the years, some have a very rough, imperfect translation carried on from generation to generation. But those who have gone through the Nadi text are concerned, are seen to be people who can be more reliable with prediction throughout the history of Nadi astrology, right? So this session today is just to give you an idea of what it is that is different in the Nadi text and how it compiles the entire knowledge of astrology. Now, it is not correct to say that the Parashari astrology, Gemini astrology are different from Nadi astrology. I'm not counting KP because that's a very modern development and not a part of traditional Vedic astrology. But essentially, Nadi astrology, Gemini astrology, Parashari astrology, they're basically the same, focusing on different principles and different aspects of astrology. They all have existed since astrology has existed. It's not that Gemini astrology is something new or Parashari astrology is something that is different from either Gemini or Nadi astrology. It's the same principles. It's just how you put it to use in different ways. Right? So with that introduction, today I'll just share the principles of Nadi astrology and application. I'll just try to share everything in as brief as possible, but also make sure that it is worth your while. Also make sure that it is something that you find useful, and whatever we discuss today, you can at least apply and make predictions from, right? Rather than going into just theoretical details. So moving on, I already covered most of this, so I won't be going into this. Nadi texts are the most authentic work. They have such usage of principle that at times it will just mesmerize you. The predictions and everything, whatever you can get your hands on, it will just be something that you have never thought of. The predictions that you find, the way a guru is teaching those predictions or saying those predictions to his student, and the students are learning and understanding from the practical example of a horoscope, is just something totally different from all of the theoretical texts of astrology, right? So without delving much into this, let's go into the principles. Let's go into how the Nadi view of Vedic astrology is. So this again I covered, so let's move on. Now, before I even go into the understanding of astrology, right? Before I even go into the understanding of the basics of Nadi astrology, or what are the principles, it is important to at first understand how the world, how astrology, and how predictions and events that happen are classified, right? And how they are structured, because this is going to be your fundamental from where predictions stem from. It's impossible to understand all of the significations that exist in the world. You cannot learn or memorize everything, every signification of a planet. You cannot know that a planet stands for a car, it stands for your relationship, it stands for some part of your body, it stands for this, it stands for that, and it stands for several other professions, because every 5 years, 10 years, something changes in the world, right? You did not have a career of computer science 50 years back, 100 years back. You did not have astronauts 100 years back, and there will be many things, many significations, many type of predictions that will go on in the world which were not there in the past. So the first thing from where you should understand, you should start your journey in astrology, is understanding how predictions are created. How, and that is the first session, or the first point from where the Nadi astrology begins. How is it that you start through a prediction? And there is the structure that you find. The first of all, the very first thing in astrology that comes, that is has been defined, are fundamental classifications. No matter what changes in the entire world, the fundamental classifications will not change. They have been defined in such a way that these are never going to change in the world. These are have been defined in as much of depth. And what do I mean by fundamental classifications? These are the classifications that you begin with in Brihad Parashar Hora Shastra, or in Gemini Sutra, or in any other astrology, or in any other version of astrology. You see that you have defined classifications such as the male and the female Varna, right? You see that you have defined elements which are fire, earth, air, water, and then the sky, the Panch Tattva. You see that there are indications of the three types of gun that you have. You have the Sattva gun, you have the Rajas gun, and then you have the Tamas gun. Similarly, you have all sorts of classification. There are classifications for dhatu. There are classifications for, in signs, you have classifications of movable, fixed, and dual. And likewise, you have classifications, a fundamental structuring that has been created for everything that exists. On top of these, you have what is called characteristics or significations. Right, so I'm assuming that there is a basic understanding of astrology from your perspective, but please feel free to ask the question. So, for example, if I say that Mars is a planet that rules the fire element, what I'm saying is Mars is a planet that indicates angry temperament, or it indicates anger, right? I will say that it indicates roughness of voice or harshness of voice, because that is the quality of the fundamental element fire. When I say that moon, for example, represents water, I would say that moon represents emotions. It represents fluidity. These are the characteristics or significations that come on top of the classifications. Based on the fundamental classifications, what is it that you can associate as an attribute or as a trait with your analysis? That's the second part. The third part on top of this is the Desh Kal Patra, which is to say, based on your understanding of the question at hand, or the prediction that you're making, or the person, what is it that practically makes sense in that respect? So if I say, and going back to the example that I was just taking, moon represents the water element. The water element represents fluidity or change. And right now, I am talking about the horoscope of a person. Then in that context, a change, for example, can mean a change of location. It can mean a change of job. It can mean a travel. And so when I'm making a prediction, an influence of moon is going to give me whatever is the location change, or whatever is the whether a location change is going to happen for a person, whether a job change is going to happen for a person, whether a travel is going to happen for a person, right? And now, as simple as this sounds, or as basic as this sounds, this is the entire concept on which all of the texts of Nadi astrology are based. All of the concepts of even Parashari astrology and all other practices are based. There is nothing that you cannot derive from these four structured, four layered analysis that you have to make a prediction for. Almost anything can be derived from it. You just have to go either top to bottom or bottom to top. For example, if you are asking for a prediction and someone says For example, this one, what is the temperament of my partner, right? Now, the question that is asked to you, or the result that has been posed to you, is temperament. In the Deshkal Patra, it is the person. In the characteristics and significations, it's a certain planet, let's say Mars. And then Mars, the fundamental classifications is fire, one of the classifications that is associated with Mars. And then I can go back and say that the person is short-tempered. Right? Just an understanding of how a prediction is derived from the very basics, even when you do not have any example of what planet represents what thing, or what combination represents what. As long as you do this in order, you will be able to make a prediction. Nothing else is required, and your predictions are going to be true. Now, with that, let us move into the more structural part of the classification. So the common classifications that are covered in astrology, Parashari astrology, or any other textbook of astrology that you go through, be it Brihad Samhita, Brihad Jatak, whatever, these will be at least the basic ones you find, which are nothing more than classifications. The first of all is duality, which is male and female, or the good and the bad influence. You have the three gun of Sattva, Tamas, and Rajas. You have the four Varn, which are the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. In Tattva, you have five: fire, earth, air, water, and sky. In Grahas, you have 9, and then in the zodiac, you have 12. Right? And these are all that are used for making predictions, and these are all from where all significations come into being. And the structure or the orientation of those with respect to everything that you can define is this. The physical part of the world, the materialistic part of the world, which is the Prakriti, manifests as in two characteristics of male and female. I'm not talking about the Purush element, I'm talking about Prakriti itself manifesting in female and male, in the two types of bodies, because the male body is also a body, the female body is also a body. Then you divide them into Gun and Tattva, you can divide them into the three types of Dosh, and so on and so forth you can use to understand whatever it is that you have to make a prediction for. You can go ahead and understand whatever it is that you want to know. For example, if someone is suffering from cold is a Kaf dosh. Kaf dosh happens from the affliction of water and earth. So find out what the water and earth element or the water and earth planets, the combinations they are making, and you have yourself a prediction. Right? It is this fundamental knowledge and this fundamental information that helps you make practical predictions, breaking down the situation into these fundamental classifications. If you are able to do this, you will be able to make any predictions. Right? No need to go above and beyond anything. No need to memorize text, no need to memorize rules, no need to memorize combinations or several yogas. As long as you are able to follow this channel, you will be able to arrive at the correct prediction. And I'll just share that on how that is done. So that is there with respect to the classification. Now let us go with something that the way it was intended, it has never been used, which is the word yoga. You would have seen that there are yogas in Parashari astrology. You would have seen that there are yogas in Gemini astrology, and almost everywhere that you study in astrology, you see the word yoga being used. There are several yoga. There is Gajkesri yoga, there is Chandramangala yoga, there is Buddhaditya yoga, there are Mahapurush yoga, Raj yogas, and so on and so forth. But exactly what the yoga is your fundamental concept of astrology. It's something very fundamental. Once you get the hang of it, no need to remember any other yogas, right? And I'll give you a simple mathematical equation to that. The entire concept of yogas is simply this. You have 3 variables in astrology, or you can say 4 variables, although I'm not including nakshatras in today's class. So you have variables: a planet, a sign, a house, or a nakshatra. And the simple thing that stems every other prediction in astrology, almost everything, every single thing that comes out of it, is you combine one entity and its signification with another entity and its signification, add the context of Deshkal Patra to it, and you get a result. Right? Now let us go through what this exactly means in a simple manner. So let's take two very common examples. For example, just assuming basic understanding of astrology, the first house or the lagna indicates your personality, yourself, correct? Let us say that you have moon in your first house, right? And I'm just giving a very basic prediction. We will build up on this. Now, moon as a planet represents water element. One thing that we can derive out of this is emotions, because the water element represents emotions. So what is the prediction? The person is emotional in nature. Now that is a very basic prediction that you can say to someone who has moon in the first house. Now let us complicate things up. Lagna is yourself, and it is also your birth, because that is what indicates you, that is what indicates when you were born. That's the moment in time which indicates where you are born, and the situations of your birth. That's the time where your horoscope comes into existence. Moon represents water and hence represents travel. What is the prediction that becomes? The person with moon close to lagna has travel in the first year of their life, right? Let us go even a step further. And again, don't match it with your horoscopes right now, because we are just talking about one combination in isolation. Let us talk about this. Lagna or self birth, lagna, which represents the self, which indicates your birth, also indicates you, going back to the first signification. Moon, if you know from the signification, represents mother. Moon represents mother because moon is the water element. Water gives life. Water is the reason why we have life on earth. And the giver of life in this Deshkal Patra context of the individual is the mother, who nurtures and who brings in all of the fluids and the structure of the body for the person, right? So the nurturer is the moon, and hence, because it's the water element, it represents the signification of your mother. So first signification and second signification of mother, what's the prediction? The person will be close to their mother, right? Just giving you very basic example right now before we expand on that. Now, this is the one principle in astrology on which everything is based. For example, let's take a very common example. You would have heard of Buddhaditya Yoga. Sun Mercury combination is called Buddhaditya Yoga. One of the significations of Mercury is intelligence, right? Mercury is intelligence. One of the significations, one of the traits associated, one of the elemental classification leads to intelligence, because Mercury is the earth element. Sun is the fire element, is the giver of life. One element of one signification of sun is radiance or light. It is the giver of light. So what happens if light shines on your intelligence? Or what happens if your intelligence has radiance? The prediction is the person is sharp, the person is witty, the person is scholarly, so on and so forth, right? And hence every single prediction in astrology is derived. This is the very crux of how the Nadi text deal with prediction. Nothing else required. As long as you understand the planets, as long as you understand the houses, and as long as you are able to do A plus B is equal to C, you can deliver any prediction at all, right? Now let us spice things up even more. Let us say one signification that you have is the first house again which is yourself. Now, if it is yourself, if the first house represents you, the first house will also represent your surroundings. And it will also represent your home. I'm not talking about whether you have a house or not. Your house is represented by the fourth house. Your home is represented by the fourth house. But the surrounding of your home, where you live, where you are situated, your immediate surrounding, the things around you, they are represented by the first house. And let us say that the first house has moon. And one of the significations of moon is water. What will be the prediction? That you have a water body near your house. Either a swimming pool or a river or a water storage tank, a municipal water storage tank, or the likes. One of the predictions, right? And you can go on doing this as long as your A plus B is correct, your C or your result is going to be correct, right? One thing. And again, right now, dealing with that in a very basic manner or in a very simple manner. Right? Piyush ji has a question if you have to relate them with respect to their degrees. Yes, we do. And that tells you when exactly an event happens. I'll shed light on this a bit later, but just for an example, suppose your first house moon is ahead of the degree of your ascendant. Like your ascendant is approximately 10 degrees, your moon is 20 degrees, which is to say that the moon is after the ascendant, and ascendant is the moment of your birth. Right? So if ascendant is the moment of your birth and moon is ahead, then that means that the travel is going to happen after the birth. Ascendant comes first, moon comes later on, and so there is a gap. It is something that is indicated towards the future. And let us say that your ascendant is 10 degrees in any sign, moon is 3 degrees, 4 degrees in any sign. There was a travel that the mother undertook while in her pregnancy with the child, right? Because that's an event that is indicated for before the time of your birth. That is one understanding of the degrees. I'll shed light on it as we go ahead, right? And the second question that Dilip ji has is how far will the water body be? That depends on the differentiation with the Lagna. And again, water body is one signification where we have so far not yet qualified Deshkal Patra. For example, what happens is in today's day and age, right, in the modern societies, what happens is if you're living in an apartment or in a society, it is possible that you do not have any water body falling because you are living inside of a compound. Then in that case and in that Deshkal Patra context, you have to find out exactly what signification of moon can manifest nearby your house. Right? And then you will have to scan through the significations of moon, and that's where your understanding comes. So in Nadi text, it is quite simple that the person lives near a well or the person lives near a river, because something written 5,000 years back, these are the only two possibilities. And the predictions become quite simple. If your Deshkal Patra is such that you can resort to such simplicity, then you will find the result. Otherwise, within your context and within your approximation of Deshkal Patra, because remember, significations change. There was no significator of computer science 100 years back. It is now. No astrologer has told us, or no Maharishi has told us which planet is going to be governed by, which planet will govern, for example, computer science. Right? But yet we have those planets. So always qualify significations from your Deshkal Patra. That is the crucial missing factor that always makes predictions inaccurate. For example, early marriage. I look at someone's horoscope, and if all of the combinations are there, the prediction that I get from a theoretical perspective is the person is going to have an early marriage. Now, what is the definition of your early marriage? In today's India, 18 years is the minimum legal age. Nobody can get married until the year of 18 unless they are from a very rural background where the law is not implemented. Now, the earliest marriage cannot be before 18 years of age. 100 years back, early marriage could have been as young as 6 years, 7 years, 8 years of age. Right? That is what gives you your accuracy in your quantitative prediction. But anyways, I'll come to that part of it later on, the distance and all of these things. But that is where we'll go ahead. Then Madhumita ji has a question that is this only if a planet is in the first house? No. So right now we are talking about influences. So what right now I'm talking to you about, what right now I am sharing about is there is a signification of you, and there is a signification of water, and the prediction is there is a water body near your house. Now, obviously, if you are living in a society where there are 4 blocks or 4 buildings surrounding a swimming pool, that prediction is true for every single person, right? So it will not manifest in every horoscope with moon in the first house. What it can happen is one indicator of you is the first house or the lagna. The other indicator of you or yourself is in a male horoscope Jupiter, which is the Jeev Karak. The third indicator is Lagna Lord. Right? The fourth indicator is the Navansh Lord. So on and so forth. The indicator of water is the Cancer sign. It is the Cancer Navansh. It is moon as the planet. Any permutation and combination of this will deliver a result. And every single thing that happens in your life, no matter how insignificant it is, it has an insignificant presence in your horoscope. Then, if moon is aspecting your lagna at the exact degree, then also moon is influencing lagna. Then also the prediction comes true. Right? So all of these indications, again, within the context of Deshkal Patra for now. I will qualify on the Deshkal Patra and what comes or does not come in the Deshkal Patra as we go ahead, but that's the thing, right? And just wants to reiterate for everyone, please post your questions on chat so that I can take that up, because we have a bit of a ground to cover. So that's why if you have questions on your chat, I'll be able to answer them in between, right? While I'm covering the topic. Okay, so that's the crux of the principle, the first very basic thing. And everything in astrology, the most complex prediction, you can say that the person is going to marry someone who has already divorced from a first marriage from this A plus B. Nothing comes beyond, nothing in astrology comes beyond this. Just you need to know how you get that A, how you get that B, and how do you apply the Deshkal Patra. Now, again, giving you how an analysis is done and what's the relevance of it. Now, it's here that I will have to emphasize that while talking about Nadi astrology, you cannot move away from Parashari astrology no matter what is said. Those are your fundamental principles. A Nadi astrology text or any discussion of Nadi astrology is a discussion of prediction, assuming that you have gone through astrology in its entirety. Assuming that you know the 9 planets, their significations, their elements, the houses, what these houses indicate and relate, and then you come into the world of prediction. Right? So, now let us try and understand how a result is created. So, first of all, a result, as I have told you, is nothing more than an A plus B. A result is nothing more than a combination of 2 entities and 2 objects, which could be anything. And I think that's the question Mohanji has been asking. That is a combination is nothing more than an A plus B. It could be a planet in a house. It could be a sign in a house. It could be a planet conjunct another planet. It could be a planet aspecting another planet. Anything at all, and in any manner at all. If you consider moon as the first house and you are analyzing the horoscope and you have Venus in the second house, it also is a combination. If you are considering Lagna as the first house and there is Saturn in the second house, that is also a combination. Every single thing that you can derive, every single statement you can make out of a horoscope is a combination. And there will be predictions from it. Right? For example, Venus is in the 11th house from Sun is a prediction. You can make predictions out of it. Venus is in the 6th house from Sun, there is a prediction. I mean, Venus cannot be in the 6th house from Sun, but if Saturn is in the 6th house from Sun, it can be a prediction. If Mercury is in the 12th house from Saturn, you can derive a prediction out of it. And no matter how you churn the horoscope, you can keep making predictions out of predictions as long as you remember to apply the A plus B. And that is, in the nutshell, the Nadi of Nadi astrology, the summation of Nadi astrology, right? But again, how a result is derived, as I just showed you, is a combination of signification. So you have Deshkal Patra, which tell you the result. Again, common example, early marriage, Deshkal Patra says the earliest age is 18. So your definition of early and late marriage stems from 18. Where a normal marriage, in terms of India, normally women get married in the age of somewhere 24 to 28. Whether you are close to metropolitan cities or whether you're close to rural areas, the age changes a bit, but that's the average age of marriage. So if an early marriage is indicated for you, it shifts 24, 23, 22, 21, depending on how early it is indicated. If you have indications of a late marriage, for example, then it shifts more than that, 29, 30, 31, 32, 36, 40, so on and so forth. Were the predictions from someone from a situation where everyone is getting married in the age of 15 or 16, the prediction changes. That is the difference why a person born in the same time never have two same destinies, because their Deshkal Patra is different. Their definition, horoscope does not tell you that it is in the 11th year in this month that you are going to get a prediction, that you are going to get a result. Horoscope tells whether it's early or late. And then within that early or late, you find a dasha that is capable of delivering the result, a transit that is capable of delivering a result. Common example, Saturn's transit through a sensitive point in your horoscope, something that indicates a major event for you. Saturn, one signification is ill health. For a child who is 2 years old, Saturn's transit creates the result of ill health because the 2-year-old child cannot get a job. Saturn is the karma karak. Someone in their 20s looking for a job, a sensitive transit of Saturn creates the opportunity of job or job change for them. Someone in their old age, Saturn can even lead to death. All of these are significations of Saturn. And yet, what result Saturn will deliver depends on what exists in the Deshkal Patra. Desh meaning the country, the surrounding, the society, whatever is allowed in your region, in your area, in your city, in your place. Kal means the time period. It means your age. Also, it means what century you're living in, whether computer science exists for you or not, whether a profession beyond what your caste is telling you exists or not, whether an independent profession for you who's a married housewife, whether it's possible for you or not. And all significations play under the control of Deshkal Patra. Right? So if you have promises of Saturn in the 10th house, for example, in its own sign, in a very strong placement, aspected by benefic influences, the prediction is you have a good career. If you are a housewife and the year is 1453, you will not have a career. The result is your husband gets significant fame in his career, because that's where the Deshkal Patra applies. Right? So these definitions depend on this. Another common example, if Venus's transit or Jupiter's transit happens in the 2nd year of age, Venus's dasha or Jupiter's dasha or the dasha of your 7th house comes in the 2nd year of age, you can't get married in the 2nd year of age. There the result will be the other active significations. 7th house represents travel. It can lead you to travel. Venus represents Marriage or wedding in family. It represents wedding in general, hence wedding in family. You can attend a wedding, but you will not get married at the age of 2. And then when your Deshkal Patra allows, it is from that point of time that a Dasha result is active for you. Right? So that is the first thing. The Deshkal Patra combinations and yogas are nothing but a combination of A plus B. Second thing that you look at is how strong a result is overall in a horoscope, right? So there you have all of your Parashari points. An exalted planet gives better, stronger, more visible result. Debilitated planet gives less of a result. A planet in your lagn has significantly more influence on your life than a planet sitting in the 6th house or somewhere. So where the planet is, what area it influences, which planet is strongest, whose dasha is running, these are factors that decide your strength. And then you have all of these factors that you would know of. So I'm not going to go into detail on those for this class. I'll proceed with the Nadi version of this. But that's the thing that tells you how strong the result is. For example, moon placed in the lagna. I can go ahead and make such a strong prediction that there will be a water body near your house. And it will be correct. The third thing, which is often neglected, is positive or negative results. Right? Now, whether you look at Parashari astrology, where Parashar in detail covers this in the different avasthas he has, Lajitadi avasthas, Shayanadi avasthas, and all of these avasthas. The definition of positive and negative result comes from affliction. Definition of affliction is, and let me see if I can write this down so that it's clear. And very simple. The benefic planets, they give good, positive, or improving result. Malefic planets, they give negative, damaging, or detrimental result. Now, the benefic are the Soumya Graha as defined in astrology. Malefics are the Krur Graha defined in astrology. The benefics are, the two true benefics are Jupiter and Venus. The four true malefics are Saturn, Mars, Rahu, and Ketu. Sun and Mercury are weak malefics. Moon of the full moon or near the full moon, which is when it is 120 to 240 degrees away from sun. It's a benefic. Mercury in benefic association is a benefic, and you know this. I will not go into detail much, but that's the definition of this. Now, it does not mean that Jupiter gives benefic result. It does not mean that Saturn gives negative result. What it means is this. Suppose you have the 10th house and it has the influence coming from Rahu, Mars, Saturn. Whenever a malefic planet influences something else, that is the time it damages the result of this place. Itself, Mars will do good. A planet never in itself is positive or negative. But whenever a malefic or a Krur Grah is influencing another planet, it has the tendency to damage. Whenever a Shubh Grah is aspecting a benefic or a malefic, it has the tendency to protect. That is why you have all of these Parashari yogas and Parashari statements across that Jupiter's aspect is protective. Rahu's influence damages. This is the reason. A Krur Grah is defined as someone who does not let the other signification do its job. And the definition of an affliction, to give you a thumb rule so that you don't have to look at all of the dashas and avasthas and all of these things to understand, is 2 or more malefic influences. 2 is visible negative, 3 is significant negative, and 4 malefic influences is denial on any result. right? But that is the indicator. For benefic, even a single benefic influence is protective. It will ensure the result, right? That's the three types of results. So the question is, what will happen? How strongly will it happen? And will it happen on the positive side or on the negative side? So for example, if I go back and just refer to my previous example of travel, that if the first house, moon, the person travels early on in their life, and there is a lot of affliction on first house and moon, the person will have difficulties in their travel. Let us make another signification, or let us make another prediction out of it. Let us say that moon, which is the planet of travel, 12th house, which is the planet of travel, which is travel or journey rather, both of them have 2 plus malefic influences. Or moon is placed in the 12th house and aspected by 2 malefics, let's say Rahu and Mars. The prediction, the person has losses in travel, because moon travel is in the 12th house of losses, influenced by 2 malefic or negative indicators. This person, and this is a prediction that you can go ahead and make, in these cases the person loses in travel. In case that there is moon in the 12th house with an indicator of finance, for example your second house lord, the person loses money in travel, right? The person has theft in travel, and so on and so forth. So that again is just how you go ahead and start making predictions, right? Saturn in the 12th house is not that case, because Saturn is going in the 12th house. So what will be the signification? The signification will be what is the A plus B. And again, for making any predictions, go back and try and understand whether it is satisfying your A plus B rule or not. So let us talk about Saturn in the 12th house. So Saturn is A, 12th house is B, and then you are looking for what will be the result of this combination. Now, since anything associated with travel is not indicated here, and if you take 12th house as long distance journey, you are unable to take losses, because 12th house you can take one signification at a time. If you are taking loss, then you are having a loss of your job. The indication of Saturn in the 12th house is the person loses or changes at least one job, or the person has a job loss at least once in life. That is the prediction of Saturn in the 12th house, when you are combining the signification of job and losses, and this is there, this will happen. The second indicator is when you are taking Saturn as career and 12th house as travel or foreign, the person will be in a career where they have to travel abroad or they have to travel frequently, and then here again your A plus B condition is satisfied, right? And you can make your predictions. The third thing that you can take is Saturn is pain. One of the significations of Saturn is pain. 12th house represents your feet. Saturn in the 12th house, the person develops pain in their legs over time, primarily in the old age. Old age because Saturn is the significator of old age, right? And you can go ahead and make any predictions like this in any manner, and as long as you just have your significations, you're combining them correctly, you can have your prediction. That's the entire concept behind Nadi astrology, and that's the entire concept behind Nadi astrology predictions. For example, in Bhrigu Nadi, one way of making prediction is where the person is living and how their house is, or how their nearby surrounding is. There, and let me give you an example, is Jupiter is what is considered as the Jeev Karak or self indicator. The Bhrigunadi does not consider Lagna. You won't find any horoscope in Bhrigunadi where the Lagna is identified. You don't even know the Lagna. Basically, Jupiter is where your Lagna or your self is indicated. Just like today we consider Sun as the father, Moon as the mother. So in Bhrigunadi, Jupiter is the self Karak or the Swa Karak. Right? Now, if Jupiter is associated with Mercury, my A plus B tells me that the person is living or the person's house is near a school. If I twist the Deshkal Patra a bit and the person is living in a society where commercial activity, school activity, and such activities are not happening, person is living, the person's neighbor is in the teaching profession. If I shift this, or in today's world, Mercury is also the IT. So the person's neighbor is in the IT profession. If I shift this and if I say that Sun is here, the person is living next to an administrative building or an administrative office, right? And so to answer Madhumita ji's question, all of these are correct and you can make combination. Try making combination from Jupiter's placement in your horoscope, try making them from the Lagna, try making them from the moon, and try making them from the Lagna lord. Every single bit of it will be correct, provided allowed by your Deshkal Patra, right? But every single, I mean, any of this is not untrue. Any of this is not incorrect. And there is a question by Prakash Ji, one benefic influence will nullify the two. So the rule of thumb is do a plus and minus. So for negative result, for afflictions, this is, I'm telling you a net total. 0 means average result. 1 plus 1 means good result. So meaning no malefic influence, 1 benefic influence gives you a total of plus 1. Or 1 malefic influence, 2 benefic influence also gives you a plus 2, a plus 1. 1 means good result. 2 means excellent result. Minus 1 means result with some negativity, some obstacles. 2 minus 2 is visible obstacles. Minus 3 is major obstacles. And minus 4 is almost a certainty of denial of result. Right? Another question, Partharthi, just one combination that you have mentioned is Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Sun in the 12th house, right? Just I'll give you one example so that we can cover, and then we'll move on to the next topic because I still have some other topics for you all to cover. And I will definitely urge all of you to try this because I can vouch for the principle. It is the most fundamental principle of astrology, backbone of everything. It will not fail as long as your significations are correct. Now, the combination that was mentioned is, let's see, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Sun in the 12th house, right? Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Sun in the 12th house. Now, I will not go into the entire combination because then we can spend like 2 hours talking about all of the possibilities of this combination, right? One thing that happens here is Mercury is a dual planet. You know that there are 2 dual planets or which have duality indicated, which are Mercury and Jupiter. Explanation for that is among the dual signs, Mercury owns 2 of the dual signs, Jupiter owns 2 of the dual signs. So these are 2 planets with duality. Another explanation, Mercury sign Gemini is represented by twins. And Virgo is also represented by a virgin who has a different interior and exterior self. Right, so shy on the outside and curious on the inside. That's the definition of the sign Virgo. So there is a certain duality associated with Mercury. Venus is marriage. This is Mercury, and Sun is ancestry. So what this indicates is in the previous generation of the person with this combination, someone would have had double marriage. Father's brothers, grandfather's brothers. In the ancestry of the person, someone has had 2 marriages, right? This again is valid in the Deshkal Patra where polygamy is not allowed. So for example, if you are not looking in a Hindu family where polygamy is allowed, then you'll have to change your significations, right? Then again, Another combination, same combination, another result. The combination that you're seeing is Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun in the 12th house. Right now, let us see what happens, or what is indicated. Sun in the 12th house indicates Sun is one of the significator of the Sun in the 12th house is soul. Another signification is illumination. Another signification of the 12th house is what you can say moksha or afterlife. Sun in the 12th house makes one either learn some of the spiritual sciences or be enthusiastic or inclined towards the spiritual sciences. Just a question, if anyone can confirm, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Okay, sure. Right. So yes. So that is the thing, right? And one of the significations, one of the indications. And again, go as much as you can, add as many significations, go from left to right, add 5 significations, and you will be able to deliver the result, provided the significations you have chosen are actually associated with the planet. That's the learning bit of astrology. That is where you cannot go wrong. Right now, let us talk about a bit about the interpretations. Now, primarily the 3 variables, again discarding nakshatras, is planets, signs, and houses. And I will not delve too much into this, but planets are the moving entities which become the primary concern. They are the ones that act as house lords. Signs decide the type of influence on planet. So, for example, Moon in a fiery sign. Moon is the mind under a fiery influence. Your A plus B combination says the person reacts, because fire is very quick to burn, right? Fire is very reactive, very aggressive. So the person is quick to react. Moon in an earthy sign, the person is calm and more controlled. Now, these are the simpler significations, but then again, the signs filter the results of the planet. The houses, which are the orientation of the earth, they primarily talk about what aspect of life. For example, first house is you, second house is your wealth, first house is your immediate surroundings, second house is your family, so on and so forth. And the way the result is indicated, going back to the previous principles, is all you have to do is understand these influences and strengths. So, for example, if Venus has Moon's influence, the influence bit of it, for example, the influence bit of it tells you about what the result is. And the strength tells you about the prominence of the result. Right? For example, Venus is in a malefic influence, aspected by Rahu, aspected by Saturn, aspected by Mars. 3 negative influences on Venus. There is negativity in your married life. There is problem in your marriage or in your relationship. If 7th house has negative influences, there is problem with respect to your marriage. Right? That's the what bit of it. And prominences, if your Venus is exalted, your wife comes from a very influential background. Your wife will have a major say or a major prominence in your life, even though you have a bad married life. It's how much of an intensity it has, prominence it has. For signs, you have the flavor. The signs modify the flavor. For example, the example that I just gave you. What element is influencing a house? Through a sign. What element is influencing a planet? Through a sign. And that tells you the flavor. Right? And then lordship again tells you, which we already know, that the lordship is also judged equivalent to the sign. Houses tell you the signification and the nature. Signification meaning the specific individual results, right? The first house represents yourself, the second house represents your wealth and family, the third house represents your courage, your communication, things like that is your basic signification. Nature or quality is there are 3 negative houses, 6, 8, 12. Association with these negative quality, these also contribute a -1 in terms of affliction. The positive houses are the Kendra and Trine, 1, 4, 7, 10, 9, and 5. The other are neutral. right? So then they contribute a plus or a minus, and then basis that they tell you the nature. For example, common results that you know: seventh lord in the sixth house, troubles in your marriage. Now, what specific troubles are there? Sixth house is the house of your enemy. So there is confrontation with your wife, arguments with your husband. Seventh lord in the eighth house. Eighth is also negative, but eighth indicates negativity, long-term negativity. So there are health issues to your wife, right? Again, not doing nothing, but just the A plus B. In the negative connotation, when the association is 6, 8, 12 houses. In a positive connotation, when the association is 1, 4, 7, 10, 9, 8, 9 and 5. In a neutral connotation, when it's not all of these two, right? That's your one step regarding the entire process in a nutshell. And then finally, how to deliver a prediction, or how to go about a prediction. Now, just to give you an idea in a very basic manner, in a crisp manner, and then we can spend some time on examples. That's why I want to cover this as early as possible. Is you have these basic classifications, and remember, it is the basic classification that is fundamental. Never memorize Mars as the planet of anger. You will go wrong. Mars is the planet of anger because Mars is the fire element, and fire element is anger. If you memorize it like Mars being the planet of fire, it is possible that someone has moon in Aries and the Lagna in Aries and the person is short-tempered. It's quite possible that the Lagna Lord is conjunct Sun and the person is short-tempered. You will miss that because you are going the wrong way. The primary classifications are from where predictions stem. The primary variables, planets, signs, and houses, they carry those multiple significations together. So a planet will carry an element and gender, a caste, and so on. For example, fifth house having female influences, you are likely to have a female child. There are nitty-gritties to it, but then I won't be able to cover them right now, but just a gist of it, right? That is because the female gender is carried by the sign, the house that is influencing the fifth, or your child, right? Combine these two to make a prediction from a horoscope, analyze the yoga, strength and affliction, and add the Deshkal Patra so that you have a prediction. Then within the Deshkal Patra context, find the timing. For example, marriage is happening. If the dasha of then the first thing that you ask yourself is the marriage happening? From the analysis, you say that yes, the marriage is happening. Then the question is, what are the planets responsible for marriage? Your answer will be Venus, the seventh, the natural karak of marriage. Seventh house lord, the natural indicator of marriage in the horoscope. Moon, the lord of the fourth house. Lagna, the lord of the first house, because it's a life event, a major life event that happens with you. And the ninth house lord, because marriage is usually a religious indication, some religious auspicious event. Now, then the question is, if a late marriage or early marriage is indicated, I already told you how that is there. Just to give you another example, afflictions delay the result. Saturn, one of the significations of Saturn is delay. Rahu, one of the signification is delay, right? Because Saturn, the word, Sanskrit word Shani or Shaneshcharya means slow moving. All results of Saturn are hence slowly delivered. And Saturn's influence leads to delay or slowness in getting the result, and hence some delay in marriage. Then once you have established that the average age of marriage for this person or this Deshkal Patra or for India is 24 to 25, 27 years, I must be expecting a delay of a couple of years. Then at that point of time, which dasha or antardasha associated with Venus or the ninth house lord or moon or the seventh house lord is running? And it is in that period that the marriage is going to happen and your prediction will be correct, right? So that is the combination through the final analysis. And one thing that I'll just briefly touch on as we go ahead and talk a bit about example is remedies. Remedies is also nothing that you have to memorize or nothing that you have to learn. Remedies is just one simple logic, right? And which I'll just cover as we go ahead. Now, just a few quick points before I go ahead in examples. And this is where it all matters. This is the primary 6 principles to keep in mind. The first thing is everything matters, which is usually what people avoid. So if you have a benefic influence, or if you have something good indicated with your marriage, let us say, and that's the usually the confusion that even you will have, right? At some point of time, you may have had this confusion. For example, Venus, let me give you an example. Venus is in the fourth house. You get sorry, Venus is the wife, let's say, wife, and fourth house is happiness, the Sukhsthan. You get happiness from your wife. And another combination, Venus in the fourth house in that horoscope is with Saturn. And the indicator is Venus is wife, Saturn is delay. And the indication is there will be delays in marriage. Now, usually a question that comes to anyone's mind is, which should I go with? Which is the correct prediction? And that is where that thing is wrong. Every single combination in the horoscope will deliver you a result. There will be a delayed marriage and you will get happiness from your wife. If in a horoscope your 10th house lord is in affliction and aspected by Jupiter, you will get both the results. You will get the negative result of, say, it's being placed in the 8th house, say it's being placed in some negative position, and at the same time you will get the positive indicator also. And that is how multiple things happen in our life, right? It's not just the simple question of whether something is indicated to be good or bad. For example, look at your lives, look at your career. There have been ups and downs, disappointments, and all of those things. So every single result matters. And Karthik Ji will answer that question in just 1 minute. Every single indication happens, and every single indication on every single factor matters. For example, Venus is associated with Rahu, right? Let me give you an example. And I'm just covering basic significations, but you can expand on these. Venus is with Rahu. A common indicator is this is your wife. Rahu represents something that is foreign or alien or outcast. So the common prediction that people go with, and which is mentioned in texts, is wife comes from a different caste, community, or religion. And your 12th house is not your 12th house, my bad. And your 12th house, 7th house, I'm sorry, has the influence of Jupiter. Or 7th house has the influence of your, let's say, 9th house lord is there. Now 9th house represents tradition. And 7th house represents wife or marriage. So you will not break the family tradition in marriage, or you will get married in agreement with the family tradition. The result that will happen is you will marry by the choice. One example from Deshkal Patra, you will marry by the choice of your parents, but your parents' choice will be of someone who's from a different caste, community, or religion, or from a different cultural upbringing. Both of the events will come true. And that's true for every single thing in the horoscope. Never estimate that a negative thing has been overridden by a positive thing. And never estimate that a positive has been overshadowed by something negative. They are all mutually exclusive result. One combination, if it exists in your horoscope, it is bound to deliver its result. Right? And that is why we have such a vivid life, because we have multiple combinations. We have so many combinations giving us so many results that we have such a different day-to-day experience of life. Some days it is good, some days it is bad, something happens for the positive, something happens for the negative, no matter how great your horoscope or combination is. That's the first point to keep in mind. The second thing is principles always hold, which is something that I must emphasize on, because that's where people, especially learning astrology, they get confused. If your horoscope is telling that there is something wrong with marriage, then there is something wrong with marriage, as long as the prediction that you have made applies in principle. For example, if Venus is in affliction, seventh house is in affliction, there is a problem with either the marriage or the wife, depending on whatever combinations are there. And that is the case. Even when the other person is denying it, it is true. It's just that that is not something that they want to share, or that's not something that has happened yet. But if your principle is true, your predictions will hold. You can be as confident about it as you want. The third thing which I always emphasize on is the Deshkal Patra, because that is what gives you which predictions and which significations are correct or incorrect. Right? The fourth one is, and this is where every outstanding prediction that you have ever come across comes from this one principle, which is unbounded interpretation. What I've told you has no limits and no restrictions. You can apply it as you want, provided you are not breaking the fundamental rules of astrology. For example, let's take a very simple case, and I'll give you complicated results from that. So let me take a horoscope. Let me take a quick example of a horoscope where Sun is placed in Virgo, for example, and Mercury and Mars are placed in Libra. And let me tell you what I can make out of this. So the combination that you are getting is, I'll write here at the top, Mercury plus Mars in the second house from Sun, and there needs to be a result from it. Mercury indicates multiplicity because it is a dual planet. Mars, as you know, is the Karak of land and landed property. Sun represents your father. Second from Sun will represent father's wealth. What is the prediction? The father of this native owns multiple landed properties. Right? And if the combination is there, it will be true. Until and unless your Deshkal Patra is of the person that you are dealing with is, and his family is barely making any earnings, where the signification will change. For example, if this were a horoscope from 500 years back, the prediction that has been written, and this will relate to you if you have gone through yogas that have been mentioned, what relates to this person is, this person has multiple bags of grains and jaggery in their home. So compared to other people of his community and his caste or his financial situation, which is not very well off, he is still doing decently, where there will be multiple bags of grains and jaggery and all of these things in his home, or multiple copper ornaments in his home, because Mars will then become copper, because the Deshkal Patra doesn't allow the person to own landed property. Right? And then that becomes a prediction for you. You can go even far beyond and see something like this. Venus is placed in Taurus. Ketu is placed in Sagittarius. Correct? Now, Venus represents your wife. Ketu is in the 8th from Venus. 8th is chronic suffering, hidden issues, long-term health problems, longevity, and anything that gives you persistent chronic negative result. Because the 8th house defined in Sanskrit is called the Randhra Bhav. Randhra means something that is a black hole. that is totally hollow, and you don't know to what depth you are falling, which is why it indicates death, which you can metaphorically equate to a black hole, right? Anything that is an issue where you are completely in the darkness, you don't know how long it will be and when will it end, and it seems like never ending, is 8th house. And there is Ketu in the 8th. Now, this indicates that the person's wife is going to have a major health issue at once in their life, because Ketu is a malefic. 8th house represents your longevity and any chronic major sufferings, and there is a malefic, strong malefic influence there in the 8th from Venus, and that can be your prediction from the same horoscope. Correct? And so on. You can look at any combination, any planet placed anywhere in the horoscope. As long as your principles are correct, you will be able to deliver the result. That's this thing. Unbounded interpretations can happen, and absolutely no limits to this, as long as the principles you're following is correct. Right? And you can do it yourself. You can look at any horoscope, you can just try and add these combinations and see whether the result holds true or not. Right? The 5th point that I need to make is charts, because you don't just deal with horoscopes. You deal with Prashna charts, you deal with Muhurat charts and all of those things. So anything here, one factor gets added is what is allowed by the chart. If you are creating a chart to answer something about the career of the person, any combination is valid as long as it pertains to the career. Since the Prashna chart is not about anything other than career, and you cannot go on making these predictions that I'm doing about the father and the mother and so on, right? But whatever is valid in that chart, any analysis can be done from anywhere in the horoscope. No need to stick to the lagna, no need to determine what houses are there. Just figure out how the combinations are indicated. You are asked a question on career. See the combinations from the 10th house, see the combinations from the 10th lord, see it from Saturn, see it from any other career indicator that you can think of, see it from the 11th house because it is finances, see it from the 2nd house. Whatever combinations you can make, go out and say that. It will be holding true. Right? And then the last bit of it, which is the most important, and I'm just going to leave you with, and then I'll see if there are any other questions. In the meantime, please feel free to put forward your questions on the chat. The last thing that I'll tell you is the fundamental principle from where remedies originate in life, or remedies have originated in astrology. Why is it that remedies came into being, and how is it that these remedies have been created that we go on using? How the totkas came into being. Right? It's not just that doing something random suddenly helps something in the horoscope. That is what is called manipulation, which is to say anything that is controlled or that can be controlled becomes a remedy. Anything that cannot be controlled becomes a prediction, because what the horoscope is telling you is A plus B equal to C needs to hold true. Right? So suppose A is, let's say, Saturn, B is Ketu. Saturn and Ketu are there in the same sign, and the result that you say is whenever you set out for any career related work or any job related activity, there will be a break into it. If you're looking for a job change, your first interview will not clear. If you're looking for a promotion, the first consideration, you will not be promoted, because Ketu is the significator. Like Mars, Ketu is the significator of breaks. You would know that. Cuts. Because Ketu is half. Ketu is only the body. Rahu is the head. Ketu is just the cut remaining, limping remainder of the body of dragon's head. And that's why it indicates breaks. And Saturn indicates your career. So now the thing is, your career is indicated to have breaks. One prediction is there, right? Suppose I can control this. Suppose I can make a break in your career happen without actually having to ask you to go to an interview. Does my A plus B satisfies? If it satisfies, in the horoscope, does it indicate that there will be multiple breaks in one activity? It does not, because for that, a dual influence will be required. If this combination was happening in Virgo, Gemini, Mercury was involved, Jupiter was involved, any type of dual influence that multiplies the number was involved, multiple breaks would have been indicated in the same activity. But the break combination is happening only once, because what I read from this combination is career related endeavor will have a break. There is nothing to indicate multiplicity. So what I can tell as a remedy, and you may have heard of this remedy through Lal Kitab or through other situations, is leave your house for any work, come back, and then leave out of your house again. And what is happening? A break is being created in the endeavor that you have to do with respect to whatever your activity is. All of the pujas, all of the gemstones, any type of remedy that you know of in astrology is a way of manipulating this A plus B equal to C, which need not be direct, which need not be anything concerned with something relevant. If you're going for a career attempt, it need not be associated with your career at all. As long as you are able to create the Saturn Ketu combination, its malefic effect will be averted. That's how all of the remedies come into being. That's how the pujas come into being. That's how the most outrageous Lal Kitab remedies of throwing something in the river comes into being. Right? Anything that can be controlled becomes a prediction. That cannot be controlled becomes a prediction. Anything that can be controlled turns out to be a remedy, provided you are able to replicate the signification as is. The thing is, since most people over the time have tried to memorize the remedy and they just go on giving the remedies, it may be one remedy mentioned for Saturn at one point of time for someone's signification in the Lal Kitab or in any other book of astrology, but it may not be the correct remedy for your combination, and hence you don't get the result of remedies, right? But from a prediction perspective, this is the result. Now you will relate why for Mangal Dosh a Kumbh Vivah is said. There is a break in your marriage that is indicated because of Mars. So what you do is religiously get married in that religious marriage ritual and then cut the tree. It doesn't matter. It's absolutely not indicated that your husband will die, that your husband is your second husband, that for some weird reason you got married to a tree or you got married to a pot. The signification is having that marriage event plus that breaking event in one go, so that the signification gets averted. Right? And so on, every single result that happens. So the moment you are able to identify a signification that can replicate a result, a negative result, it can be averted in many cases in the horoscope from the remedies perspective, right? And all of these other things are just an extrapolation of this. Gemstones, the different types of totkas that you have, and all of those things. So that was my 2 bits today on the principles of Nadi astrology, which I've just covered from a theoretical perspective, from my perspective, the way I cover it in my classes. This is what you will find in all of the Nadi texts. So today you will find many blogs, articles, people writing on Nadi astrology, and you will see several combinations. For example, Ketu in the 4th house indicates you are living in a broken house. How is it that that is happening? Ketu indicates break, 4th house is your house. Right? And every single thing, there is no secret to it, no mystery to it, nothing that is something that's a very secret knowledge. It is A plus B, as long as your significations are correct. And as long as your significations are correct, as long as your theoretical understanding of astrology is correct, you can make your own A plus B. You can have your own predictions without any bounds. And you can create your predictions, validate them in horoscopes, and then go on giving predictions that even probably the Maharshis have not yet given for anyone. Right? Someone going into a computer science engineering was not a prediction given by Maharshis. It was just another astrologer doing an A plus B and deriving that since Mercury is an analytical planet, in today's day and age, we are looking for a mathematical, technical, analytical field. It needs to be governed by Mercury and Mars's influence. Right? Mechanical engineering, since it is machines, electricals, and heavy machinery, it needs to be Saturn and Mars. It's all that has been derived from significations, and as long as you have your basics of astrology thoroughly in your grasp, you can go on making your own predictions, right? And it does not require memorizing all of these yogas. Every yoga is nothing more than this. Every yoga is nothing more than a consequence of this. Gaj Kesri Yoga, Jupiter and Moon are in Kendra to each other, right? Kendra are benefic placements that I told you with respect to signs and houses. So what happens in Gaj Kesri Yoga? Jupiter strengthens Moon, Moon strengthens Jupiter. They both protect their results because Kendra protect each other. So what is the result? Jupiter's result of character improves. The person has impeccable character. Moon's result of strength of mind improves. Jupiter and Moon's mutual result of wealth improves. This is your interpretation of Gaj Kesri Yoga as it is given in those classical texts, right? And it will hold true. So that is where I stop. I'll just have a look at the remaining couple of questions and then we can conclude the session. So one question is, if the 10th Lord Venus in the second aspected by Saturn and Jupiter, what will be their career grows over time? So Saturn indicates a bit of a slow growth in the start, but since Saturn's second house has two benefic influences, Jupiter and Venus, and second house is really your possession, over time, two things. One, the person gains recognition with respect to their work. Second, the person gains significant the person has significant accomplishments with their work, because the second house of wealth, the wealth that you derive out of your career, is good. Second, it also indicates significant growth in earnings over time, right? Because second from Saturn is basically your second from 10th house, your 11th house. It indicates your earnings. Two benefic influences, Jupiter and Venus there, indicates initially delayed income because Saturn is aspecting, but since two benefic influences are there, two prosperous influences are there, over time career will thrive and financial growth will be significant. That's one, right? Second, Sushma ji has asked a question, is there really anything called doshas? So yes, doshas, the word exists. Now the word dosh, first of all, there is nothing like these pitru dosh and all. They are just words used. So if sun represents your heredity, an affliction of sun will be called pitru dosh. Not because it is creating a dosh for your pitra or anything like that, because that's the term used to associate with sun. Buddha Aditya Yoga is not is used because Aditya is another name for sun, right? And Buddha is the name for Buddha and all of those things. So as a result, dosha simply means something that is likely to give a negative result is called a dosh. For example, Mangal dosh, because it has certain negativity about it. Dosh simply means it's the result of an affliction. Yog simply means, in the traditional terms, that it's something positive. That's how they've been differentiated in the text that we have written. But apart from that, nothing specific to be concerned about or worried about those. They are basically the same thing. One question from Anil Madanji is, Rahu Moon in the 5th house aspected by Saturn and Ketu. What does this mean for the career? For the career, it means a bit of an obstacle with respect to your career because it's the 8th house from your career, right? So it indicates the longevity of career, also all major events. So Rahu and Moon there means that at least once in your lifetime, you need to go through something of a difficult or a scandalous or a negative situation with respect to your work. Since Moon and Rahu are there in the 8th house, that negative result will be will be created by your own error of judgment. And as it's a result of your own error of judgment, the remedy is, at work, make sure whatever work gets tied back to you, you are not doing it without multiple considerations of right and wrong. Right? So just one example. And Ketu and Saturn in the 11th, giving career, calf pain, can we give remedy for that? So Ketu and Saturn in the 11th, Ketu indicates guts, Saturn indicates suffering. In the 11th house, if they're giving career and calf related pain, for career, you need to make a couple of job changes because that cut signification needs to be overcome. And another thing to keep in mind is keep changing your career occasionally, because since Ketu is there, over time, a signification of cut will be created. So if the person naturally keeps changing job every 3 to 5 years, the possibility of break happens less. With respect to your health, Saturn Ketu in the 11th indicates some minor surgery. Get that done, the problem will be resolved. right? Any other questions about this? Thank you so much for those kind words, Nitika ji. How does it fit in if we go exactly with the fundamentals? There is intuition. See, basically, let me tell you very frankly and very clearly, intuition that we say, predictions don't come from you from somewhere beyond the concepts of astrology. They can, but then you are a psychic, you're not an astrologer. Predictions need to come specifically from these principles. The intuition or intelligence is associating them with Deshkal Patra. That is where your actual accuracy of prediction lies, and that is totally up to you. For example, if you're talking to someone about career, if you are not aware of what 10 different professions are, you cannot make an interpretation for someone else. Maybe you read 10 things from a book, that engineering is this planet, science is this planet, medical is this planet, and then someone comes to you and asks, can they be a film director? And you will be blank. Then going back from your principles of astrology to the signification of a director, and then finding the combination in that horoscope, giving a yes or no, that is your intuition and intelligence that has to come from your this thing, right? Saturn and Moon and Mercury in the 5th house for Cancer ascendant, how the career progresses. Career will be progressing good. There will be some obstacles in between. Saturn and Moon combination, there is usually some breaks in your obstacles, but by your 30s, by your early 30s, it starts to get better relatively. There will be a couple of job changes required because Saturn is career, Moon is change, Mercury indicates multiplicity. So career stabilizes after multiple job changes, right? That is the thing that you have to keep in mind. And Karthik ji, if you can just tell me your question, and I think this is the last question that we will take because there are too many combinations coming. We are already over time. So Muthu ji, you can
So it's
from here. Yeah, Karthik ji, if you can write in your question or tell me your question, I'll answer that.
Yes, Harshji. If Saturn is in the 7th house, but is in the own house, say Aquarius,
yes.
Do we take Saturn to be the malefic and declare that there would be a delay in the marriage, or because it's in the own house, we are taking it as a good thing? How do we judge that? Because there's a conflict of Karakatva and the own ownership of the house.
We will say both of those things. Because as the planet, it is always a malefic. But as the 7th lord in the 7th house, it protects the 7th house. So the prediction is there is some delay in the finalizing of marriage, but married life will be very strong.
Okay.
And very good, right? Because never you will never ignore one aspect of the prediction or one signification for the other one. But yeah, that is where I finished. And Muthuji, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Arshji. Like one last question, like not a question, kind of suggestion. Like for a beginners, which book do you suggest to start with Nadi? Like any other suggestions?
See, Nadi, I cannot recommend a book for beginners because everything that is available is assuming that someone has gone through astrology. So for someone who wants to study astrology, my suggestion is always begin with Brihad Jatak, Brihad Parashar Hora Shastra, Purva Kalamrit, Uttar Kalamrit, and then go walk your way into Nadi, because in Nadi you will never find something where everything is mentioned very clearly. Even the translations, for example, J.M. Bhasin ji has done the translation, even B.V. Raman ji has done translations, R.G. Rao ji has done translations, but then again, at times it is their own interpretation because the text that they have at hand does not tell them where the prediction is coming from, right? So at times it's possible that what you get right, they get wrong. So their word is also, it's reliable. They're very esteemed people. 80% of what they've written is correct, but then you cannot blindly trust their interpretation. So it's always better to go through the basics of astrology first and then venture into the text of Nadi Astrology.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you again, Steve, for making this session.
Thank you so much, Muthu Vijayan ji, and thanks for inviting.
Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you so much.